Good evening. It's Sunday, March 18th. I'm Doug Snyder. This is Intimacy with God Ministries, and it's Sunday's Thought Conditioner. I have a question for you. What do you think about? How do you respond when you hear the phrase intimacy with God? I've often wondered how people respond, what they're thinking when they see that phrase, like when I go to the bank and I deposit a check, or when I'm speaking with somebody and sharing a testimony and they ask what I do. And I say a number of things, but one of them is we have a ministry called Intimacy with God Ministries. I wonder what people think. Well, I'd like to share with you just a brief overview, a brief review or history of how that came into being. Now, 20-some years ago, you didn't hear that phrase too often. At least I didn't. My reticular activating system wasn't activated yet. And my wife and I had just completed a number of travels. We had traveled with a college choir around the East Coast in the States. So we'd gone overseas to Europe the next year with the college choir. We traveled in a quartet with friends, and we had traveled in a group with about 9 people in a van. We traveled around the United States, and then we went overseas into Thailand, India, and Sri Lanka. And we did 26 concerts 63 concerts in 26 days in Thailand. And we traveled all around the United States when I went to seminary, both in the Midwest states and the West Coast states and the East Coast states, and then also correspondingly in the provinces of Canada. And I think we did 168 concerts for the seminary. And we stayed with a lot of people and had thousands of conversations. Probably stayed with, 400 or 500 people in their homes, had conversation with them. We had conversations throughout the day at restaurants or rest stops or during concerts or college visits or wherever we were. So had thousands of conversations. Been in hundreds of churches and listened to sermons and pastors and parishioners and talked with them. And in all those experiences, I began to form two things: an ache in my heart and a concern for people. Because what I was hearing was that not everyone who called themselves a Christian or who attended church or said they followed Christ actually knew him personally, had a relationship with God. They may have an understanding of biblical things. They may have a relationship with a doctrine or a denomination, and they held to certain patterns of behavior on Sundays and Wednesdays or Saturdays. They may have had a very sincere heart to do good things and to help people. But missing in some of the conversations was any mention of a relationship with God, that they would commune with or speak with him and he would speak back. And see, I knew that a relationship with God begins with a relationship with Jesus Christ, his Son. Jesus said the way to the Father is through the Son. And he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one gets to the Father except through me. And so I knew that was the beginning point of an intimate relationship with God was through Jesus Christ, his Son, and understanding what his life was purposed to do. Now, this morning in church, our pastor gave a great message on love as the central concept, central idea, central element, the central relational drive of being a Christian, loving others. That's a great message. And that is really what I was not hearing in all those conversations, was that people had first of all, a love relationship with God. And so in a conversation with a friend of mine and listening to the Lord, reading scriptures and praying, out comes this phrase, intimacy with God. And I knew that I was going to spend the rest of my ministry, my calling, helping people, facilitating them in getting into a relationship with God where they commune with Him, talk with Him, listen. He gives instructions. He encourages. He's fun. He's funny. He's loving. He will discipline you, but only in His love, out of His love. And how does that work? Well, for example, today it's the 18th, so I was reading Proverbs 18. And in verse 20, I had not read that much. In fact, I hadn't even underlined it. I'll show you. I read the Proverbs a lot. I take notes. I read. I reflect. I meditate. I ask God. But I hadn't underlined verse 20. It jumped out at me, and it was, "From the fruit of his mouth, a man's stomach is filled. With the harvest from his lips, he is satisfied." And so I knew that the Lord was speaking to me about this verse. And it fell in line with what He's been teaching Beth and my wife and I, about the use of our tongue and the use of words. And so, I looked at that verse and I thought, from the fruit of his mouth, a man's stomach is filled. With the harvest from his lips, he is satisfied. Well, fruit comes from a seed. If you plant a seed in the ground, a tree will grow, and from the tree or bush comes fruit. And so what we're reading here is that our mouth spews out seed, and those seeds create a harvest. And what harvest we plant, we eat. So if we say bad things, if we say slanderous or gossip things, we will eat things which will be harmful to us. But if we speak words of peace, if we speak in love, if we speak words of affirmation and encouragement, then those are the things which we will digest in our system or in our spirit, and it will be good for us. It will be a good meal. Even in just the next verse, I guess, it's more clarifying. It says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." So, in short, it's what you say is what you get. Words are seeds, and they have power. And so in my relationship with God, my intimacy with God, that is partly how He speaks to me. I could read the verse again next month, and another verse will jump out and speak to me in a different way, because the Word is alive and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, able to divide bone and marrow, soul and spirit, and He is speaking to me each day, all throughout the day. And He wants to, with every single person He's made, He wants to have a relationship. What father wouldn't want to have a relationship with his child? That's you. You were made by God. You were made special. You were designed by Him. You have a special purpose and calling. You have specific gifts that He wants you to use for the building up of His kingdom, for the building up of other believers, and for the expansion of the kingdom of God, the family of God. So, intimacy with God. What do you think about when you hear that phrase? Those are just a couple ideas. I'm going to probably talk about that. I don't know if I'll talk about that next week, but I'll bring that up again. Intimacy with God is really a love affair. It's a friendship, a deep friendship of love with the Creator. And out of that well, that endless, bottomless well of God's love, we get filled up, and then we can go love other people. And so I just encourage you to think about the phrase, and look for it when you pray. Look for it when you read scriptures. Look for it in people. Listen for it as you see creation and as you go through your day, and ask God, show me who you are, Father. That is intimacy with God. That's just a little bit. It's a little overview. I know it's not very in-depth, but I trust that that's helpful. And as always, subscribe, like this, and share it with others. And please post a note down below or comment. And if you want to PM me privately, you can go to Facebook and send me a message. I'd love to correspond and help you draw near the Father if you have some questions. All right, until next week. Goodbye.